All right, welcome to Optimize Dental Study Group. And today we have Rita from Recall Max, which we're super excited about because she's going to go through over recall management with us and go over the kind of tips and tricks, but also the management side of it, which is fantastic. I mean, we are mostly all office managers on here with a few dentists that manage their own practices, but it is basically when Rita and I first discussed bringing her on, we were super thrilled, and we're super excited to have her on because she has a wealth of knowledge in a clinical background, as well as a wealth of knowledge in just the technological side of utilizing systems and protocols and the recall systems that they have developed in Recall Max, and then also the operations side here that we use in clinics. So we're super excited to have her on. Rita, I'll turn the time over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Teresa, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with all of you guys today. Just a little bit of a background of myself. I am a hygienist. I was in practice for 13 years, left practice, and then went off to Recall Max. And I did do hygiene coordinating at one point in time, and I did manage a practice for a very brief, short period of time. So I've kind of had worn many hats in the field. And today what we're going to be talking about, and I'll just share my screen as well. You guys can all see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So today what I want to talk about is working smart and not hard. So, I mean, long gone are the days where we're just using a PMS, but, you know, with automated messaging, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes with it. So how can we utilize it so it's most effective and it's actually helping to navigate staff shortages and increase productivity and efficiency at the office? So, and then, yeah, so let's dive right into it. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to chat, interrupt me. It's all good. Okay, so who's Recall Max? So first and foremost, we are a Canadian company developed by dental consultants. We're based out of Calgary, actually. We have 25 years working with groups, DSOs, solo practices. We've got a wealth of knowledge. Most of our company comes from some sort of dental background. We are a recall management app, but at the same time, because of how we were born, we do rely heavily on statistics. Everything has to make sense. And that's what we're going to be starting with today is the state of the nation. So then and now, so pre-COVID to now, we're going to look at some industry stats as to where we stand, what the role of automated messaging is, how Recall Max differs, and then the rewards for your efforts. And then I'm also going to tap into above and beyond Recall Max, what we can do from a strategy point of view when it comes to best, like the keys to success in running a practice. So we'll dive right into it. So we'll start with all the stats first. And I pulled this together so we're in 1 in every 4 Canadian practices now. So this is a snapshot of 2,500 Canadian practices. And pre-COVID, unscheduled patients was 52%. And COVID, still now, it hovers 58%, 56%, every single day. It can change, but it's hovering around that. We're looking at the amount of patients that amounts to 1.8 million versus 2.5 million. Okay. Missed and canceled patients. Pre-COVID, 7%. Manageable. During COVID, height of COVID, sometimes it was up to 50%, but the average was around 18%. So you can imagine, obviously we know this is contributing a lot of stress to the office. And if we look at the amount of patients, I mean, of the 2,500 practice, that's 280,000 versus 828,000 now. Okay, so it's quite a bit. And the cancellation rate is still on our servers, and we have cancellation management within our software, is still hovering at 16% today. I just checked. If we look at the due and late patients, so pre-COVID was 33%. And the height of COVID, it was 38%. And when I talk about recall to anybody now, and I talk to dental offices every single day, nobody wants to talk about recall. And I totally get it because people are busy. They're booked out solid for 6 months. And if we look at the data, it's showing us that, you know, the eager beavers has come back, but the ones that need the reassurance haven't. We may think that we're up to date because we're swamped and booked, but we're still playing catch up. And even if we look at, you know, pre-COVID at 33%, that's still not great. I mean, ideally, we want to get down to 15% because that's manageable. And at the end of the day, you know, for a regular GP office, your recall and hygiene patients are the bread and the butter of your practice. So that's ultimately, if you want to grow your practice, we really need to focus on those recall patients. The other thing I want to note is that the attrition rate has gone up as well. So, and that's obviously, you know, understandable. It's gone from 9% up to 13.4% for the patients who haven't been in 18 to 24 months, or sorry, 24 to 36 months is what that was. And if we look at the amount of patients that are sitting here due or late, I mean, 1.2 million, pre-COVID, 1.7 million. So it's just something that we need to be mindful of. It's a downstream problem that we need to be aware of. And if we look at from like the reality of what all of this means, yes, recall is not the highest priority, but I did the data and just where we were pre-COVID to now, and it was 300,000 patients of the 2,500 practices that we work with have fallen off their recall cycle. Majority of them are 2 years late. That's 4 recall cycles. So, and time goes by fast. A lot of these patients don't even know that it's been 2 years. And it's not even, you know, the amount of money that's sitting there. If we look at it, it's $64 million of opportunity that has been missed as a result of COVID, but it's also the moral obligation that we have as health professionals. And it's the, like I said, it's the eager beavers that have come back. It's the ones that need to be re-engaged, reassured, that are the ones that have not been back. And again, if we look at the cost of re-engaging an existing patient versus bringing in a new patient, I mean, re-engaging is the most cost-effective.
Rita, if I could just interrupt there for just a quick second. It's interesting because I've been in both sides of the spectrum, what you're discussing, like where they're booked out super far and like they're not actively engaging their recalls, and the recalls are just building and building and building all those patients, and they're shifting from like 1 to 6 months to now 7 to 12 months, or they're shifted from 7 to 12 into the further and further buckets, and they're less likely to be engaged back into the practice the further they get out. However, those are the clinics that had really good systems and protocols in place that stayed booked out, right? There are continued to booked out, but there's a lot of clinics that I'm working with that had no systems and protocols in place. And now they're trying to reharvest and they don't have a schedule to work with. They didn't pre-book. And now every day is a scramble to fill in, multiple days ahead, which is a lot harder system to do. But as I've been calling patients, like I personally have been calling patients, and they haven't gone anywhere else. I thought, well, maybe we just lost a huge amount of patients, but they literally have gone nowhere else. So you're looking at that dollar amount to bring back into the practice. But now I'm looking at, you take that dollar amount and it's almost double that dollar amount because they have so much treatment to do because they haven't been in the practice for so long. And if you had a fairly good perio program, you're not talking about 4 cycles that they missed. You're talking about potentially up to 8 cycles that they missed if you had a perio program, right? So it's very interesting, those numbers, because when you actually look at your patients and you're calling them and you're like, oh, have you gone somewhere else? They're like, no, I haven't gone anywhere else. I'm like, oh, so you just haven't seen a dentist in 2 years. And they're like, oh yeah, no, I haven't. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get you back in. And they're happy to come back in. Like, now is a good time to be talking about this. And this is why we want to bring you on, because now in Alberta, COVID's over, but like it's not, but that's kind of what everyone's thinking. And so now is a good time because people are more comfortable to get out. Right. So it's very interesting numbers. And I think there's a lot of implications of those numbers as well.
For sure. And good point. I mean, you're right that there are a lot of offices that are scrambling, and that's of course stressful as well, to be trying to fill your schedule just on a day-to-day basis in the next 2 weeks. And it was actually very interesting. If we look at the patients that are falling to attrition that haven't been in 25 to 36 months, when we call patients off of those lists, it's actually a very positive experience that we're told by hygiene coordinators. It's not that they don't necessarily, like you said, have gone somewhere else or don't want to come in. They just need that extra nudge. They need that extra personal engagement. And then they're happy to come in, or they're happy to create a follow-up and say, hey, you know what, check back with me in 2 months when this Omicron is over. And then I'm happy to get myself back in. So it's, and that's a positive note, right? Because at the end of the day, working recall shouldn't suck. We have a slogan on a t-shirt. I don't have it on today, but yeah. And if we want to look at this from a national scope, because that was just 2,500 practices, this was mind-boggling to me. And we're very conservative. So Teresa, you're right. Like a lot of people are coming in ideally you have a good perio program, 30-40% of your patients are coming in every 3 to 4 months. We want to be more conservative. But if we look at this from a national scope, 13,000 practices in Canada, that's 1.9 million patients, $419 million. I mean, there's a huge opportunity here to grow your business. And I always want to take a look at it as a positive stream. And that it can happen as long as you have proper systems in place. And you were mentioning restorative. Well, off of our servers, and again, not everybody treatment plans in their scheduling system. And I divided it by half because if somebody has a missing tooth and I have the option of a bridge, a flipper, or a implant, we're going to add that together. So I divided it by 2, and it was $180 million pre-COVID, $460 million now. So it's because that small little incipient has now turned into a tooth surface, or that tooth surface has now turned into a root canal. So, and it's because they hadn't been in 2 years. So, I mean, there's a real opportunity of growth here from a hygiene and restorative perspective. We just need to get on top of it and find the room to put those patients or have proper systems in place to get those patients in. So, and of course, what these trends mean, like these trends are contributing to what's going on in the office. When the schedule is steady and staff are consistent, it's much easier to manage. When it's chaotic and staff are sick and the schedule is falling apart, it's obviously much harder. It's stressful. We've heard it again and again, and from clients that are onboarding us. So those trends mixed with what's going on, I mean, it is a big issue. Staffing has been another issue where on average, 1/3 of the population has been off. Kids have sick or have COVID and they're off, or a little bit of a sniffle here. And again, if we look at our industry, majority of the people who work in a dental office are women. So if you have kids at home, I mean, that's a huge struggle as well, something to be note of. And even pre-COVID, it wasn't easy working in the front desk. Chaos, always. I mean, I was a hygiene coordinator. You've got a million things going on. You're constantly interrupted. You've got the phone ringing. You're trying to manage your recall, trying to finish cancellations, checking patients out. You still want to be able to have that personal engagement with your patients and ask them how their daughter is that's potentially was supposed to get married, or who knows what's going on. So there's always, inside the mind of a front desk, there's a lot going on. So of course, it's always been difficult to manage. And it's not because the intention wasn't there. The intention, we all have great intentions. We want our patients to be coming in frequently. We want the oral health to be really good. We want the practice to increase revenues. We have this desire to achieve. We all do, but it's hard to do when we don't have the right tools in place, or we don't have a game plan. And then when we don't have the analytics to measure what's working and what's not working so that we can shift. So what do we do to navigate this? Well, now we're looking at automated messaging. Majority of offices have invested in technology, and it's been a really, really great thing, especially during COVID, we saw that. Like I said before, gone are the manual days of just working with a PMS. And with staff shortages more than ever, and you want consistency, you want to automate some of your processes. And where it works extremely well is confirmations, digital forms. I want to fill out my COVID form on my cell phone right before I'm about to walk in. Mass email announcement to have consistent communication. Hey, we're opened, or hey, we're following proper protocols. Newsletter, educational. Did you know it's been almost 2 years since you've been in? Like, come and visit us. So these are, even surveys to see how you've been doing, if there's areas that you can improve. So these are all really great ways of communicating with our patients without it having to be a tedious one-by-one. When we're doing mass email confirmations, we want to, of course, be consistent and confident in the message. I mean, my fingers are crossed that we don't have another big wave, but it seems like whenever we have these bigger waves, that's when the cancellation rises. So it's like, we want to kind of get ahead in the game. The variants persist, but the protocols remain the same. Be proactive about it. So again, that is a great area to be communicating with our patients. Now, this is all of our external workflow, which is great. But at the end of the day, it's not the full solution. And if we look at why, well, we want to measure now reach versus response. We have been fooled, because you'll see this. People will go from one automated messaging system that thinks they're going to do it all, doesn't. Then they move on to the next one. Then 2 years later, they're moving on to the next one. So you're shopping around, and it's because we've been told and we've been sold that, hey, I'm going to take care of your recalls for you. We've got an automated system. We have 100% reach. Well, what that means is, even if you had 100% of your patients that have cell and email address, they're just reaching those patients. What about the response? And the response is what matters the most. And that's something that we really pride ourselves in. And if we look at response, amazing confirmations, 60%, it's even higher in certain areas where it's up to 80%. They want to click on a button, confirm. When it comes to recall, it's 7% or less. I just checked it today, 4% in the last month. And how do we know that? Well, we've sent 30 million messages out last year. So that's the response rate. So, and it's also why we're so passionate about what we do and why we're such huge believers in personal engagement. If you could have a robot at the front desk, it'd work. You wouldn't have to have anybody there. But data is showing us that it doesn't. And which means if the automated system isn't doing it all, we still have this internal workflow to connect with the patients that have not responded. And when this internal workflow isn't communicating with your automated workflow, you end up losing money because they're not talking to one another. You're flying blind because you're not knowing who's responding. You might not be knowing who potentially doesn't have a continuing care or frequency booked that the automated messaging didn't message because they don't have a frequency set to their name. So patients will fall through the crack and then they fall out of the practice. So where we really differ is we closely monitor these response rates. And that's what makes us very different. And then we organize them into lists so that way you can see them nicely, from hot to cold, which I'll go into a little bit later. And if we just want to tap onto these response rate a little bit more because we love our data, 7% on the robot, 25% from a human being of actually getting the appointment booked. It's 3.5 times the result. This used to be 5 to 6 times, but because we're short-staffed, that percentage has now gone lower. We look at the amount of messages. 300,000 from the robot appointments were being booked versus 1.1 million working off of our list with personal engagement. Didn't need to be a phone call, but a personalized text, email can work just as well.
Yeah, and I think, sorry to interrupt, I think this is very, very important. And if anybody is like, oh, I don't know, like I'm telling you right now that this is 100% the truth of what I've seen, because I'm literally making calls in clinics right now, but also because I've watched it, the personal engagement. If you can send a personal text, you'll get a personal response. You'll get a, okay, I'll think about it. Or I don't know, like you'll get some sort of engagement. Whereas if it's an automated text, like I get probably 10 automated texts a week from different things that I've signed up for. And I literally always ignore them. But like if someone sends me, hey, it's this person, I might know them, connect with them at the clinic. And even if I don't know and connect them at the clinic, they're writing, hey, you're due for your hygiene. I have some appointments next week. Let me know, Teresa. And, let me know Teresa at whatever clinic. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's a person. I'm going to be like, oh, hey, you know what? Next week doesn't work for me. What about the week after? I'm free on Wednesday, Friday, and then they'll find you an appointment. And it's just like super easy and smooth. That gets to me a lot better. And I think obviously me and Rita were just talking before we got on and started recording how crazy life is. And you're just like slamming as much as you can in right now. That's going to be like key over the next 4 months, because as things pick up in the world, engagement of other things is also going to pick up, and we're going to lose the attention span of our patient base if we don't get on them and start calling them or personally texting them. If you're just relying solely on the automation, you're going to lose a bunch of patients in retention just because they're just not going to come back. And then when they think about it, they might not think about coming back to you. And that's really the high risk situation here.
For sure. And how often do you hear, I've heard people be like, oh yeah, I haven't gone to the dentist in 2 years. And I ask them, well, why? Well, they haven't called me. So it's just like they need that extra little push. And the other thing that I want to make a note here is I see it all the time. People just want to plow through their recall list. So they use a text function that just sounds like an automated system, and they wonder why they're not getting the same booking results. So even if you're using a text feature, don't sound like the auto, sound like a human being, make it a little bit more personal. Like, it doesn't have to always necessarily be just about their hygiene needs. Add something, add a personal touch in there, just so that you're relatable to them. All right. So again, yeah, 3.5 times the time. So again, that's where Recall Max really differs, is we pick up where automated messaging stops. We want to maximize the efforts of the team so that we can maximize productivity, ensure consistency, which is also key. One of the things now that you see is, we call it the Great Resignation. A lot of dental folks are leaving the dental practice, which now you have to hire admins in that don't have that experience. And you have to teach them dental on top of teaching them what the role entails. So we have call coaching built into our tools as well, because again, you want consistency at the front desk, consistency in the communication to patients, and automation in general, used in the correct way, can help fix some of these operational issues that we saw. It can help with stabilizing the practice. And that's why we really love what we do, because it's just not, there's so much more to it than just automated messaging. Where we focus is, I was saying, we want to track the people who haven't responded to the automated message, and we organize them in these patient lists. And we're looking at not just ones that haven't responded to the recall message. We're looking at patients who have left the practice without a tie. We often think, oh, we pre-appoint everybody. You'd be surprised at how many people slip through the cracks. It's mostly out of the restorative chair. And it makes sense, right? I come in for my hygiene appointment. I get my filling booked, get my filling done. We forget to book my next hygiene appointment. We also look at cancellations, at recalls, unscheduled treatment, and then follow-ups. Follow-up is huge, connecting with patients. I mean, the goal is always to get them to book an appointment, but if they don't, having a follow-up plan with what the patient agreed to. And that way, we are following their needs and their wants. And so it's, we do tie directly, and I'll show a quick demo later, but we do tie in directly on top of your scheduler, fully integrated, so you never need to leave your PMS, which is critical for day-to-day efficiency and productivity. Because if you have to check a browser and then you have to close it, well, now I'm in my scheduling practice, or my scheduling system. I'm not going in there all the time and checking a message. So you want to have something that pops up right in your face in real time. And then, of course, we want to ensure that it doesn't matter who's using it, you're going to get the same results. So Recall Max is designed in a way where it's a paint by numbers approach. Everything is laid out. Patients are hidden if they don't need to be connected with, and then thrown back onto the list when they need to be connected at a future date and time. So again, team perspective as well. We want all hands on deck. Recall should never fall on just the admin. It is a full team approach. A hygienist that has downtime, I myself utilize, I have a rapport with patients, hop onto a list, help the front desk, connect with patients who have missed and canceled with me a couple of weeks ago. And again, I have a greater chance of booking them in because I've been their provider and I've had that rapport with them. So it's, again, one of the things, all hands on deck. So that's the biggest difference between Recall Max is our automated system is connected with the internal processes. They're working together. They're in concert with one another, and it's a beautiful sound. The other missing piece to this is seeing what's working and what's not. And so Recall Max has analytics where it puts you in the driver's seat, allows you to be proactive versus reactive. You can see not only how Recall Max is performing on your behalf, but also you'll be able to see exactly how healthy your practice is. So what opportunities are sitting there that are being missed? Where is my team spending their time? I see it all the time. A team that I was just working with, one of our DSOs, They were spending all of their time in the reactivate list, which is good. I understand these patients are falling to attrition. You want to connect with them, but they weren't reaching out to the patients that are due now, which have the highest booking rate. So it's again, or I've seen it in other offices where they're booked out solid for 6 months. So they're like, well, I don't need to work my recalls. Well, again, it's not just if you're booked or not, it's the moral obligation that we have as health professionals. Let's reach out to those patients that are due this month so they don't fall behind.
Also, it's not just patient care too. Like, yes, it's super important, but if you're managing your practice and if you're helping your dentist manage his business and as an office manager, if that's part of your role, not that that's part of everyone's role, but sometimes it is as an office manager, it's really important to remember that there's opportunity for growth. And if you have 1,000 people sitting in your 1 to 6 months overdue and you're booked out for 3 months, well, maybe you should hire another hygienist or maybe extend your hours or bring in a temp to see these patients, which then levels up your patient care, but it also helps your business grow. Because if you're not growing, you're shrinking. So we have to make sure that we're constantly feeding the people that are supposed to be coming to us. We're able to house those patients and get them the care that they need. So it's both sides of the picture. It's all encompassing. And recall is really like, it's the heartbeat of the clinic. So everyone, like you said, pitches in to make it happen. So bringing on more hygiene, extending hygiene hours, if that's availability, or essentially spending more time reactivating the patients that may have been lost and making sure they get back into the schedule, or putting them on a cancellation. So you can't book them out 6 months, put them on a cancellation list. You know what? People cancel all the time, but guess what? You put them on a cancellation list, 3 months of cancellation lists. It doesn't matter. You never have to worry about filling a cancellation. You just say, hey, here's a mass text, come in. If it's available to you, you have 20 people calling you instead of you calling 20 people for the whole.
Absolutely. And it's something that we always forget about is, I mean, dentistry is a business. And that's why it's always, we have to kind of have two minds. We have to have our clinical side as well as our business mind. And we're kind of hopping back and forth between those things. And it's really difficult to be able to, it's one thing if you have just analytics to see how the practice is doing. It's another thing to have tools to be able to do something about it. But then it's another thing to have them talking to one another so you can see exactly where time should be focused. And that's really what we do extremely well. The other areas that we look at is what we consider 4 keys to success. And I'll just go this pre-appointment management, recall and hygiene management, unscheduled treatment management, and of course, cancellation management. So these are our 4 keys to success. We have a platinum version. We have an entire in-house consulting company as well. Not company. We have it in-house. Leah is our director of client success, and she had a consulting company prior to. So again, we have this wealth of knowledge, and some of these tips that she has shared as with her platinum clients, I wanted to share with you guys today. So when it comes to pre-appointment, 80% is the goal. We want to book 8 out of 10 patients. And it's not uncommon to have this feeling, like I said before, where you have booked everybody, but people always give an excuse not to book. And so how do we get these booking results? I mean, it comes down to discipline and verbiage. Okay, what verbal skills are we going to do? So tip 1 is going to be attempt to book every single patient. Okay, that's not just hygiene patients. Historically, we have, we're known to just focus heavily on hygiene, not so much on restorative. If the restorative appointment does not book, at least book them in for their next hygiene appointment so that they are coming within the practice so we can revisit that restorative. And then if you are attempting to book everybody, odds are going to be in your favor that you're going to get that 8 out of 10 result. Ideally, you want to book when they're in the operatory. That is the highest booking result. We all know this in the hygiene chair. I used to, when I was a hygienist as well, I've automatically, and this is one of my 4th points, is assume the booking. I've automatically booked you same day, same time. If it doesn't work for you, you're going to get a message 2 weeks before you can change it. Okay. So it's always better to be done in the chair by either the hygienist or the assistant, or of course the dentist. And the reason being is it builds more value because money's not in the conversation yet, right? They're in our chair. We're talking about the oral health needs, the restorative needs. So their headspace where they're at is they're thinking about the oral health needs. It's led by education, not by what it might cost them out of pocket. If we can't do that, a verbal handoff. You know, the clinician comes to the front desk. We know this, Dr. Bob has, recommended or has, there's decay in the upper right molar, has recommended we get him in for treatment in the next couple of weeks. And again, we want to make sure that it's a very clear intention and direction of what the patient needs to do. So then in tip number 4 is going to be book before they pay. So again, it's the psychology behind it, right? Get them to be book. It's a small tweak, but it can hugely impact their success here, because once they get their wallet out, they're not going to be inclined to book another appointment where they might need to, again, pay out of pocket, because they're associating that treatment with out-of-pocket costs versus their oral health needs. So book it as soon as they get out to the desk, then collect payment. And I touched base on this before, assume the booking. Okay, you like this day and this time, I've automatically done this. Does this work for you? Versus asking them, do you want to book?
Another tip that we use in a practice that we were building a perio program in was we had dual screens. So the screen that was the patient would sit at, right? Do you show them x-rays and such? We would literally have slides on there that would just like play over and over. And one of the slides was like, we automatically pre-book your recall appointment at every appointment. So you go home not having to remember to rebook your recall. And so those appointments are rebooked. Even if the assistant didn't do it in the chair, the receptionist, when they, marked that they were billed in this practice management software, would literally be like, oh, it's not pre-booked. Okay, we pre-booked it for them and we put it in, so that every time they came out, it wasn't even a discussion. And then we handed them the receipt. Yeah, your appointment's just on the bottom there. And that became habit. And then every patient expected it, to the point where no one even talked about their recall appointment. They just assumed it was booked. So it's a really good thing if you can start rolling that out, and you just make notifications of it. We automatically rebook it, and we assume the rebook for you.
For sure. And it's like retraining our patients, right? Sometimes they just need a little bit of a retrain. It's a learning curve for them too. When it comes to recall management, we want to be working. So how do we optimize the hygiene and recall process? Well, first step is working from hot to cold. I see it in the numbers. And this is the automated messaging system. It goes from 9% of people who are due this month and next month are likely to book through an automated message, down to 2% to the reactivate list. And that's the automated messaging. Imagine what personal engagement does. So again, we want the team to be putting in their efforts where they're going to get the most result. Do your prep work, know what you're talking about. Don't just plow through the list. Have an intentful conversation there. Build that trust. And it's about balance and budgeting time, right? We want to manage our time effectively. We want to alternate between the automated messaging. Don't sound like a robot, but if the automated message them this month, we're going to do personal engagement the next month. If they're not booking, creating a follow-up. I mentioned this before, never stop altogether. Even if you are fully booked out, you can put them onto an ASAP list, still connect with the patients that are due now. And then again, verbal skills. A strong skill set's going to help you excel. We want to avoid, the words list, or it's just a cleaning, or, it's going to be real quick, or sorry, or any of those. We want to bring the provider back in the conversation. Your hygienist asked me to connect with you to arrange your perio maintenance. You're on a 3-month schedule so that you can maintain your oral health. Going back to those clinical notes and taking a look at that. And of course, contact goals. So it's always a sweet spot of over contacting a patient and pushing them away, or under contacting them and not getting them in on time. So what we found to be most successful is 30 days prior to when someone's due. If they don't book 1 month later, every 2 months until they're a year late, and then every 3 months. And again, it's managing time effectively, because if I have higher booking results from the patients that are due this month and next, and the late 1 to 6, I want to put my efforts in there because I'm going to get the best results. So that's why we've just kind of have it all laid out there and nice and organized. It's also overwhelming when you're looking at like 2,000 patients that are due or late, and you're like, how am I going to connect with them? So it's kind of breaking it up. We have this like 10-minute recall management where it's like monthly planning, where we're going to say, okay, you know what? These are how many due and late patients we have. We want to divide them by 2 to get our monthly contact goals. We divide that by 4 to divide it up by a weekly basis. We have this many staff members. So then I know exactly It might just be 20 patients per day, which is manageable. How much time does that take me? An hour and a half? So I think it's breaking it down as well so that it's not as overwhelming. And we can, if anybody wants these documents, we can send them to help with the team from a management perspective. Unscheduled treatment. Okay, so we know that hygiene and recall patients are the primary driver to production, because that's obvious. That's where restorative gets diagnosed, and restorative production makes up the majority of practice revenue. So it's incredibly important. And unscheduled treatment has additional factors that limit booking results. People are waiting for PDs. Maybe they don't have insurance. Maybe they're nervous about coming in. And we've covered some of the stuff with pre-appointing slide and optimization, but what we want to use, or where the sweet spot is we know that that patients are most likely to book when, so patients are most likely to book 4 to 6 weeks within that treatment, when that treatment plan was originally created. Okay, and we know that we want to contact a patient 4 to 6 times within 6 months of that diagnosis. And there's a couple reasons for it. There's a decline in the success rate because it's not fresh in the mind. So reasons, they forget why they may need it. The pre-D is about to expire. Obviously, the treatment plan can change. And then at the 6-month mark is typically when they're coming back in for their hygiene appointments. So then the clinician, the hygienist, can reiterate that treatment and have that conversation again. Bring in the dentist as well. So that is one sweet spot. The next thing is follow-ups. It's an effective way to ensure you capture the patient wishes. So what they, follow up with me in a week, or follow up with me after 3 weeks when we've gotten that insurance information, or that predetermination. So again, that's also key. So if we can't book them when they've left, have an exit strategy that you're going to follow up with them again. And then of course, cutting out time for it. Ideally, we want to carve out some time if you don't have a treatment coordinator or a consult room that you can utilize to have those conversations, and make sure we're carving out time for the admin. 10 patients per hour is what we know that it takes within Recall Max. Be prepared for your call. And again, of course, verbal skills. Not necessarily using a script that you would read off of, but what you say matters. You don't want to devalue it by saying being insurance-based, just a quick check or estimate instead of pre-D. Like, we want to take the power out of the hands of the insurance company and put it in the patients, where it's more about their oral health. Being confident, non-apologetic, direct, asking for the booking, again, bringing that provider back into the conversation, and then remind them not only what needs to be done, but the benefits of getting that treatment done. So those are just some tips there.
I think it's just, I'm just going to reiterate something that you just said, because I think it's the most underrated thing to do, because Canadians generally are very polite and they don't ask for things. And sorry, serious talking. But also, it's not just Canadians. Women most of the time don't ask for things. They won't ask to book that appointment, or like ask the patient to book. So we feel like maybe it's very assertive or like pushy. It's not pushy. If you say it with the right verbiage, and I think Rita has said verbiage like 10 times in this thing, but if you say it with the right verbiage, you can ask for the appointment. And that's okay. And getting your staff or your team comfortable with asking for the appointment is a very, very important thing, because if they're not comfortable asking for it, then you're never going to see the high turnover or the high engagement from your patients. I was calling patients today, and this gentleman was like, well, I don't know what my schedule is. And I said, no problem. I'm going to book you out a month in advance. I'm going to send you the text, and it'll have the appointment date and time in it. When you have your schedule in front of you, look at the text and get that, check it, make sure it works for you. If it doesn't, just text me back and we'll move the appointment. And he's like, oh, that's perfect. I was like, okay, no problem. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, and I'll get that scheduled and sent out to you right away. And it's just that kind of conversation continually. It's like engaging in the patient, but like they're busy. I could hear that he was driving. Well, he's not going to look at his schedule. He's busy. He has kids that are screaming in the back of the car. Well, but I still want him to book the appointment. Well, at least then if he's got an appointment scheduled, he's going to contact me if any reason just to cancel the appointment. And then we can talk to him about why he wants to cancel it. And you can engage with the patient when he's free to talk to you, but at least he's in the schedule, having conversations and just like asking for the booking and say, hey, can I do this for you? I would really like to schedule this in for you. That way you can reach back to me if it doesn't work. And then they feel like you're helping them. It's just how you address it can be clever. And it doesn't have to be a pushy sales, like an American styled sales, which I've been through a bunch of these programs where they tell you how to sell dentistry and it is very pushy. Well, it doesn't have to be pushy. It can just be engaging and like clever and helpful. And then because Canadians are generally very nice, they'll be like, oh yeah, that was helpful. I didn't think about that, because they're not going to find an opportunity to be like, oh yes, but I really want to make this work to book the appointment. They're going to be like, oh, I'm busy. My life is crazy. But yeah, if you can engage them in different ways, it's super helpful.
Sure. And I heard this in a talk once, that what a patient remembers of the details of their appointment is always at the very beginning and the very end. So you want to end the appointment off with a clear direction of what's next. This is what we've talked about today. Next step is getting this, you have decay here, getting the filling booked and getting that treatment done. So it's a good point, Teresa. Okay, cancellation management. So first step ideally is to be proactive. Lots of offices try to use a cancellation fee. I'm not a fan of that. And just for a few reasons. I think, you only want to charge a cancellation fee for the ones that you don't want to see again. Dentistry has become competitive. They can go somewhere else. It's more about the psychology. Ask and ask if and have them agree, and have them hold up their end of the bargain. So instead of telling them, ask them questions like, will you be able to give us 2 days notice to change or cancel your appointment? Then they're giving you that acceptance. You can hold them accountable to that. So effective confirmation also plays a role. So ensure that you have a high rate of cell and email addresses. We know that a confirmation system that's automated works great. We saw the data for that. So we want to give as much advance notice and have frequent contact. Of course, patients can get annoyed, but you can always, like in our system, you can adjust on a per patient level. Avoid saying like, it's okay to cancel or being over accommodating. You made a good point, Teresa. As Canadians, we're always so nice. We say sorry when we're not actually sorry, or when somebody bumps us, same thing. And asking them, a proactive way is there any way that we can assist you in keeping this appointment? Versus saying, it's okay. More of like a solution-driven conversation. Always try to reschedule versus cancel. Maybe they're driving and they're like, well, I don't have my calendar on me. Well, why don't I book it a couple weeks from now, same day, same time? And if it doesn't work, you can give me a call back, or we're going to confirm the appointment a week before anyways. And if they can't do that, the goal should be have a big number 7 here. You want to contact them within 7 days of that cancellation, and every 7 days for 3 to 4 weeks. Those are the patients that are most likely to book. Those are patients that are most likely to book versus the recall list or unscheduled treatment list are the ones that have missed and canceled when it's still fresh in their mind. So you want to do that for 3 to 4 weeks. And you want at least 5% of your patient base to be on a short notice list so that you have the tools to be able to fill the cancellation. Now, when it comes to short notice, it should be, did the patient get their first choice of appointment, their preferred day and their time? If not, book them for their second choice, add them to the list. You don't even need to tell them that you've added them to a list, but when a cancellation comes that fits their time frame, and you call them back and be like, hey, something opened up, your preferred day and time. Well, now the patient feels really special. They don't feel like they're on a list where we're just blasting them to fill a cancellation. And you see that in other systems where they're like, well, we can reach so many more of your patients that are unscheduled. It's not necessarily a good thing. If you reach out to all of your patients that are unscheduled and you're constantly with cancellations at 18%, you don't want your patients to know that you have that many cancellations happening in a day or in a week, right? It doesn't look very good. And you also we can annoy them because then we're sending too many messages out. So we want to sort of target specific patients that have said they want to come in that day, that time. Anything else you want to add, Teresa? Because I saw you're unmute.
Yeah, I just think it's important. There's two different modes of using your cancellation. I really like how you highlighted it. So if you have small amounts of cancellations, then just free willy add them to your cancellation list and say like, hey, listen, we send out a mass text. If it works for you, call us back. If it doesn't work for you, just ignore the text. And you can build it off that way. If you get maybe like one cancellation every other day, you can use it that way. But if you are getting, like you said, a huge amount of cancellations, or like COVID wave 35 or whatever hits us again, then don't do that, because it makes it look awful when you're calling 1,000 times. Oh, can you come in now? Oh, can you come in now? And it's like, well, I have 9 a.m., 10:30, I have 11:30, I have 1 o'clock, I have 2:30, and it's just like, well, do you even have patients coming to this practice? And that's what it's like. And you don't want to give off that vibe either, because then it also teaches your patients to not respect showing up to their appointment, because you're teaching them that it doesn't matter because you'll just fill it with someone else. So it's really important to have that balance. And then another thought came to me when you said the number 7, and I was like, oh, but what about COVID? But that doesn't mean you're booking them back in 7 days, just in case people had the same thought process as me. That means you're contacting them to rebook them within 7 days. So I don't know if anybody else had that thought, but I sure was like, well, what about COVID? And that's not really applies here, because we still need to call them and get them scheduled back in the practice, especially if you're booking 3 months out down the road, right? That's a hard thing for patients to be like, oh, I missed my appointment because I had COVID and now I can't get in for 3 months. And then they're, that far back on their perio plan as well.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. All right. So what are the rewards for your efforts when you have proper systems and tools in place? Well, if we look at you're doing late patient-based shrinking from 38% to 25% and our ultimate goal of 15%, that's $125,000 of opportunity. So again, we have an opportunity at this time to grow practices. And, if you don't have the room to expand with another operatory or extend hours, you can still grow with having 0% downtime, ensuring that chair is busy at all time, right? Even I was consulting with an office, and his new associate was utilizing the chair to talk for 2 hours about treatment, and they had a consult room that was empty. So it was just like, bring the patient in the consult room. Let's use this for hygiene if we don't have to, if we can have that conversation elsewhere. So again, there's a good positive spin to this. Just so you guys are aware of what our clients are saying about us, we don't have any contracts. We just got high. We have a stellar reputation. This is a G2 site of what people have said about us. There's even some video testimonials, and we're just getting started. We're in 1 in every 4 offices now in Canada, which is pretty exciting. So we're really happy to be here and be different. So anybody that wants to stay on, I am going to go over a quick demonstration just so you can see. I'm going to try to wrap it up in 5-10 minutes here, just to give you a brief overview. And then, of course, if anybody is interested as well, you can reach out to me and we can do a private demonstration that's more catered towards your practice needs. All right. So I am going to bring my toolbar off on my second monitor. Perfect. And let me close my PowerPoint. All right. So this is Recall Max right here. We talked about these are all our patient lists. So confirmations, missed opportunities, and recalls. A couple things that I want to note here. Unscheduled treatment can be sorted by code. So for instance, I could put my Crown code in, and that's 156 patients that were treatment plan of Crown in last year that haven't gotten it done yet. So it allows you to be strategic about how you plan treatment. And again, the lists are always, again, organized from hot to cold, as in who was most recently treatment planned that versus, 12 months ago. It's only the last 12 months. Our recall lists that are, again, organized from hot to cold. Well, if I look at Jill, I have the entire family pulled together. So I'm not going through a list where I can see Jill at the beginning of my list and then kids have a different last name, so they're in the middle. They're all pulled together. I have the ledger here so I can see what she was last in for, the treatment plan, and her continuing care. Should Jill be using, for instance, Dentrix, we're using Dentrix and she has no continuing care, or if I'm using Ableton and there's no contact, she would fall through the crack. Well, Recall Max double checks the ledger to see if they've been in for hygiene or recall in the last 2 years. You'll pick a default interval. We're going to tell you no continuing care found. We're going to tell you that we've set that frequency so that you're catching 100% of your patients. You can't lose a single one, and you're cleaning up your own scheduling system along the way. I can hop into my text chat here. I can see a summary of what the automated system has done. I can see if they've opened up their emails. I can even see what the automated conversation was, but I'm going to text Jill and say, hey, you're due, the kids are due. I click the check mark, say that I sent a text, apply it to the other family members, and Recall Max creates a note for me with my username attached to it and pushes into the scheduling platform. So what we've done now is what normally takes 4 to 7 minutes of working recall in your manually through your Dentrix or Abledent or whatever system you're using, we've cut that down to 1 to 2 minutes. Our whole goal is to allow you to connect with 3 times as many patients in a day. And it's not a fun job to work recall. So how can we make this easier and more efficient? The notes that you have in your scheduling system will pull into Recall Max as well. So again, you're not having to toggle back and forth. Well, when Jill responds to you, you get a notification in your text chat response and your action tab. You also get notified right on screen on the bottom right in real time. So again, I don't have to go into a portal to check the message. It's right here. Should Jill not she wants a follow-up, I can create a follow-up in a month from now or 2 weeks from now in order to book an appointment, or maybe it's a follow-up on a pre-B, or maybe it's a follow-up on a treatment or a collection. I don't need to remember this because Recall Max will remind me in my action tab, and I can even assign it to other users. So that way we can all work together as a team and nothing falls through the crack. And then you can sort your follow-ups by, say, I only want to see my collections today. And again, Shanine here, she owes money, she's ghosting me. Well, I'm going to say that I left a message. I'll give her a week. We push a note into the scheduling platform. We flag you again in a week to follow up. So again, you're not going to lose sight of anything. It's all right there. The short notice that we talked about. You can put somebody from the missed and cancel list onto the short notice. I can get as nitty gritty as I want to. Restorative appointment, urgent. Want to come in only between Mondays, between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. I only have a 2-hour or 1-hour window. If I'm booked out 6 months in advance, have the end date be for when I'm booked out 6 months from now, or have no end date. Provider, appointment length. It's on my list. It's the same way as if I were to be doing it through an ASAP list in the scheduling platform or writing it on a piece of paper. But what we do is we do the thinking for you when it comes to figuring out who can come in. That's when you just need to go to Max and say, hey, I want to fill hygiene. And I want to fill Wednesday, 12 o'clock. Well, Recall Max now has scanned through everybody on the short notice and only shown you the patients that can come in Wednesday at 10. 2 clicks of a button tells them it's first come, first serve to call the office if they want the appointment. So Brenda calls and takes it. And then, Riley calls afterwards. Well, hey, Riley, I'm so sorry. Somebody else beat you to it. But I see your availability is also on Thursdays from 12 to 4. I have a last minute cancellation or a last minute opening. Why don't I schedule you? So our short notice is designed to not just fill that one last minute cancellation, but to actually help fill cancellations along the way. Because when you start to confirm is when the schedule can fall apart. So that's the beauty of having these lists here as well. There's call coaching that's built into every single list as well. So back to the verbiage. And this is customizable. So you can have it directly to be what you guys say in the practice. Now tying into actions to analytics. This is where we really shine. So again, updates every night at midnight. How well are you pre-appointing? How many unscheduled patients do you have? Out of them, how many are due in late? Let me pull up a recall report that will tell me how many patients my team needs to call to be up to date. Maybe I want to dive into the nitty gritty and look up a particular user. Okay, let me look up Ron, see where he's spending his time. Well, he hasn't done any recalls this month. He's mostly just been on the follow-up list. So I can see exactly where people are spending their time. And it's not meant to be a negative thing, but redirect focus. How many calls have you made? How many appointments have you booked? And we always compare results as well. You know, how many has a robot booked versus your team booking? How many cancellations have you been able to fill? So again, we're always showing you what the system is doing. What value are we bringing to the office here? Treatment planning. What's sitting in there? How many have been contacted? How many declined? What's your downtime? How busy are you forecasted to be? Do you have the patients? Do you have the room to be able to add another hygiene chair? Add another provider in here? Extend your hours. And then of course, what are you doing against the average and the best of the best? And because we're in 1 in every 4 offices, you kind of get an understanding of where you stand against the industry as a whole, which is kind of nice, what you're trending from the previous month, and obviously the goals that we set for you. So this is what we meant by tying these actions to analytics. Of course, we have surveys and announcements, and you can change your messaging, and we have forums and online booking and all that jazz. But again, this is the key in really driving staff productivity, efficiency at the practice between the toolbar and the analytics. And the last thing I'll show you is when it comes to a training perspective, we're going to take care of that for you as well. We have an entire online learning portal. People don't have the bandwidth to sit through a 2-hour training session. It's about 45 minutes to an hour, and then the attention's gone. So we've broken everything up into videos, 8 minutes or less, with knowledge checks. And if you have our platinum version, which is our on-demand consulting as well, and it's more just how to maximize the toolbar to get the best results, you can actually see how well your team is doing on the knowledge checks as well. So you can manage sort of how well are they retaining the information. And then also, if I'm just a hygienist and I want to learn how to help my team out and just know how to use the short notice feature, I type it in there. I can watch the specific video just for that feature. So it's not only do you have the tools here, but you have an entire academy that's helping your team be successful at using it. And unlimited support, unlimited training, unlimited licenses, users, messaging. And again, it's just a month-to-month service that we have. And actually, for being in this webinar too, I do have, and let me actually bring it up here. I did bring a promo for you guys that if anybody is interested in trying it, that's the Academy Platinum. We are offering for being on this webinar, if you want to just do a health check to see where the practice stands, what opportunities are currently being missed that your team isn't capitalizing on. We can do that for you. Normally it's $800 of a value, but we do it for free. It takes about 2 to 3 days that we basically can show you what's sitting in your dashboard. If you do want to give it a try after that, there's no obligation, but if you do, you get a 60-day free trial period, $0 setup fee. So basically risk-free, try it for 2 months, see what results you get from it, and then month to month from there.
That's awesome, Rita. I really appreciate that. And also, you guys have come such a long way from when we first rolled this program out. Like, I think one of our clinics was one of the first ones onboarding Recall Max when I was working rural. And it's amazing what you guys, even just like the call coaching and all that kind of stuff is in there. So it just makes managing your team a little bit easier. You're not spending as much time training. They can literally read off the sheet and help guide them through it. If they're new to dentistry, which I'm finding more and more practices are right now because the staffing shortages that we're going through, it just allows your team to breathe a little bit more as well, which is really good. Utilizing the tools that you have to optimize your practice is like a game changer. So thank you so much for coming on. If anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll connect you with Rita as well. We also, her information's up there as well. So take a screenshot of that, or however you're watching, you can write it down, paper and pen, old school style. But what we want to tell you guys is like recall management is probably one of the hardest jobs in the practice. And we really, really have to be patient with our hygiene coordinators as they're kind of growing through the situation and trying to figure themselves out, because it is not easy. And we want to remember that it is a relentless job. And if you have more people working together on the project, if we see a higher success rate, that means clinical coming together and working with admin. It also means the entire admin team pitching in where they can. It's really super important because it is a relentless job, and using recall, using your entire team to recall and make sure that that's a primary focus in your practice. Everything else kind of falls into place, and any consultant that goes into any practice, or any trainer that goes into any practice, the first thing they focus on is the recall system, because that's what feeds everything else. So constantly managing it, even if it's going really well, are there things that you can be doing better? Are there things that you can be making more efficient in your practice? Just kind of analyzing things to make it a little bit more streamlined is super important for your team, because it takes a weight off of the chaos in the practice. Because when we're chaotic, we don't think straight and we don't do our jobs well. And we all know that. If anybody here has worked admin, you know that when things are like a cluster at the front end, everything else is just stress. It's just huge stress. You're forgetting things, and then it perpetuates itself. So if we can take that stress out of it and calm the chaos a little bit and organize ourselves, and organize our teams and have some main goals and get them motivated to reach those goals, you're going to see a better practice management system, or better practice management and systems and protocols in place. It's just going to grow your practice, and it's going to get a lot smoother, and you're going to feel like you can get some headway on things. So we really appreciate everything that you said, Rita. It was awesome to have you on. And no problem. And this will because it's recorded, will be posted on our YouTube channel for people to follow up with later. But yeah, thank you guys for all attending. If you have any questions, reach out at all. But if not, have a great night, and we'll see you next month. And I think we're having Holly Aloy on for doing Invisalign as well. She's going over finances of that. So we'll see you guys then. Thank you so much, ladies. And gentlemen, if there's any on here, have a great night.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Teresa. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.